Chapter 5 Financial IQ Number 3, Budgeting Your Money. My poor dad often advised, live below your means. My rich dad said, if you're going to be rich, you need to expand your means. In this chapter, you will find out why living below your means is not a financially intelligent way to become rich. You will learn about budgeting and that there are two kinds of budgets. One is a budget deficit, and the other is a budget surplus. The reason Financial IQ Number 3 is so important is because learning how to budget for a surplus is the key to becoming rich and staying rich. A budget is a plan. One of the definitions of the word budget is a plan for the coordination of resources and expenditures. Rich Dad said a budget is a plan. He went on to say, most people use their budget as a plan to become poor or middle class rather than a plan to become rich. Most people operate their lives on a budget deficit rather than a budget surplus. Instead of working to create a budget surplus, many people work to live below their means, which often means creating a budget deficit. The first type of budget, a budget deficit. The definition of a budget deficit in Barron's Finance and Investment Handbook is excessive spending over income, for a government, corporation, or individual. Notice the words excessive spending over income. Spending more than you make is the cause of a budget deficit. The reason so many people operate on a budget deficit is because it's so much easier to spend money than to make money. When faced with a crippling budget deficit, most people choose to cut back on their spending. Instead of cutting back on spending, Rich Dad recommended increasing income. He thought it smarter to expand your means by increasing income. Budget deficit of the government. When talking about the budget deficit of the government, Barron states, a budget deficit accumulated by the federal government of the United States must be financed by the issuance of Treasury bonds. In the previous chapters of this book, I wrote about how the U.S. government was financing its problems by selling debt that future taxpayers must pay for. The Social Security Trust Fund, which does not really exist, is filled with Treasury bonds. In other words, because the U.S. government operates a budget deficit, the money that workers and businesses have been paying into the Social Security Fund has been used to pay other bills, not to increase the Social Security Trust Fund. See the diagram below. Budget deficit of a business. Barron states, corporate budget deficits must be reduced or eliminated by increasing sales and reducing expenditures, or the company will not survive in the long run. Again, notice the two choices. One choice is to increase sales, and the other is to reduce expenditures. One of the reasons Rich Dad recommended I take a job with Xerox was that I'd learn to increase sales, which increases income. For many businesses and individuals, increasing income is hard. For businesses that cannot sell, it is easier to cut expenses, increase debt, or sell assets. The problem with cutting expenses, increasing debt, and selling assets is that it usually makes the situation worse. Again, this is why Rich Dad recommended learning to sell. If a person can sell, he or she can increase income. In Rich Dad's mind, increasing income, rather than reducing expenses, was a better way to solve the problem of a budget deficit. Obviously, if there are frivolous expenses, such as lavish parties, and non-productive debt, such as a corporate jet, it may be best to address those financially irresponsible problems before trying to sell more. Budget deficit of an individual. Barron states, individuals who consistently spend more than they earn will accumulate huge debts, which may ultimately force them to declare bankruptcy if the debt cannot be serviced. As we know, many people are in debt because they spend more than they earn. Yet, as stated in the previous chapter, one of the reasons people have less to spend is because financial predators are taking money from workers before they get paid. The justification for taking workers' money before they get paid is that most lack the financial intelligence to manage their own money. If our schools had financial education, Maybe the workers could be trusted to manage their own money, rather than let bureaucrats and bankers manage their money for them. The problem with letting bureaucrats and bankers manage your money is they think your money is their money. Looking at an individual's financial statement, the diagram looks like the one here. People in the E quadrant often have no control over these four important expenses: taxes, Social Security, pensions, and mortgage payments. From this diagram, you can see how government bureaucrats take money via taxes and Social Security, while bankers take your money via pension and mortgage payments. This action is the cause of budget deficits for many people. A financially intelligent person has control over these expenses. The second type of budget, a budget surplus. Barron states, a budget surplus is an excess of income overspending for a government, corporation, or individual over a particular period of time. Notice the words excessive income overspending. This does not necessarily mean living below one's means. The definition does not say a surplus is created due to a reduction of spending, although a reduction of spending may lead to an excess of income. It does mean focusing on creating excess income. Financial IQ number 1, making more money. Rich Dad loved the words excessive income. This chapter is about excessive income, rather than reducing expenses and living below your means. Budget surplus of a government. Barron states, a government with a surplus may choose to start new government programs or cut taxes. There are some issues with this statement. Problem number 1 is that when governments create a surplus, they spend the money. Here is how government contracts work. If a government agency is efficient and saves money, the agency is punished, instead of rewarded, by having next year's budget reduced. To avoid this, most government agencies spend all their budgeted money, even if they do not need to. This means costs keep going up and the chances of a government budget surplus are slim to none. In other words, government bureaucracies are designed to operate on a budget deficit, and regardless of who is in power, taxes will go up. How Democrats manage a budget. You may recall from the previous chapter that Democrats love to tax and spend. Democrats love to spend on more government social programs like Social Security and Medicare. The problem is, social programs only grow bigger because they fail to solve the problem they are created to address. In order to counteract this, the budget is increased, and the vicious cycle continues. In government, mediocrity is rewarded and efficiency is punished. How Republicans manage a budget. The Republicans tend to borrow and spend. They want to expand the economy by flooding the money supply with funny money via debt. It's almost like flooding the economy with legal counterfeit money. Again, extra money looks like an increase in income, but in reality it is an increase in debt in the form of T-bills and bonds, which ultimately diminishes the prospect of a surplus. Many in the middle class do the same thing by using their home as an ATM. Every time their home increases in value, primarily due to the dollar's losing value, they borrow from their home to pay off credit card bills. Simply said, it's impossible to earn less, borrow and spend more, and create a surplus. As President Clinton so eloquently put it, it's the economy, stupid. Budget surplus of a business. Barron states, a corporation with a surplus may expand the business through investment or acquisition, or may choose to buy back its own stock. Notice the two ways to expand a business: investment or acquisition. A corporation spends to expand, or it buys another company to expand. If a business cannot expand via investment or acquisition, it may buy back its own stock. This stock repurchase may sometimes mean the company feels it is not able to expand the business and opts to buy itself instead. If this action sends its stock price higher, many shareholders will be happy, even though the company is not growing. Whenever I hear of a company buying back its own stock, I realize it may mean different things. A stock repurchase may mean the company has stopped growing and the leadership does not know how to grow the business. This is not a good sign for investors. Instead of buying more shares as the stock price goes up, it might be time to sell. A stock repurchase could also mean the leadership thinks its stock price is a bargain compared to the asset value of the company. If this is the case, then investors should be buying more as the stock price rises. In other words, a budget surplus of a business can tell you different things about the business and its leadership. Budget surplus of an individual. Barron's states, an individual with a budget surplus may choose to pay down debt or increase spending or investment. Notice, Barron's offers 3 choices to individuals. These are, paying down debt, spending more money, or investing. As most of us know, one of the reasons so many people have trouble financially is because they increase spending and debt, and reduce investment. 2 choices when it comes to financial IQ. Number 3, budgeting your money. There are only 2 choices, deficit or surplus. Many people choose a budget deficit. If you want to be rich, choose a budget surplus, and create one by increasing income, not reducing expenses. A budget deficit. I have a friend in Atlanta who makes a lot of money. He has to make a lot of money. If he stops making a lot of money, his money problems will eat him alive. He has chosen to create a budget deficit. Every time Dan makes more money, he either buys a bigger house, a newer car, or takes an expensive vacation with the kids. He has another bad habit. Every 10 years or so, he marries a younger woman and has a new child. Dan grows older, but his wives are always about the same age, 25. Dan is an expert at taking a lot of money and making his money problems worse through deficits. A budget surplus. The second financial choice is to plan for a budget surplus. After making money, financial IQ. Number 1, and protecting your money, financial IQ. Number 2, learning how to budget for a surplus is essential for achieving financial integrity. The following are a number of lessons I have learned from my rich dad and other wealthy people about budgeting for a budget surplus. Budget tip number 1, a budget surplus is an expense. This is one of the best financial lessons my rich dad passed on to his son and me. Pointing to the financial statement, he said, "You have to make a surplus an expense." In order to create a budget surplus, his financial statement looked like this. Explaining further, he said, "The reason so many governments, businesses, and individuals fail to create a budget surplus is because they think a budget surplus looks like this." In Rich Dad Poor Dad, I wrote about the importance of paying yourself first. Budget number 1 is an example of paying yourself first. Budget number 2 is an example of paying yourself last. Most people know they should save, tithe, and invest. The problem is, after paying their expenses, most people don't have any money left to do so. The reason is because they consider saving, tithing, and investing as a last priority. Let me illustrate what I am saying. Again, looking at the financial statement you can tell a person's priorities. In other words, most of the middle class's financial priorities are: priority number 1, get a high-paying job. Priority number 2, make the mortgage and car payments. Priority number 3, pay bills on time. Priority number 4, save, tithe, and invest. In other words, paying themselves first is their last priority. A surplus must be a priority in order to create a budget surplus. A surplus must be a priority. The best way to make a surplus a priority is to reprioritize your spending habits. Make saving, tithing, and investing at least priority number 2, and list them as an expense on your financial statement. Easier said than done. I know most of you can agree with the logic of what I am saying and agree that people need to make saving, tithing, and investing a higher priority. I also know this is easier said than done. So let me tell you how Kim and I handled this problem. Soon after we were married, we had the same financial problems many newlyweds have. We had more expenses than income. To solve this problem, we hired Betty the bookkeeper. Betty was instructed to take 30% of all income off the top, as an expense, and put that money in the asset column. Using simple numbers as an example, if we had $1,000 in income, and $1,500 in expenses, Betty was to take 30% of the $1,000, and put that money in the asset column. With the remaining $700, she was to pay the $1,500 in expenses. Betty nearly died. She thought we were nuts. She said, "You can't do that. You have bills to pay." She almost quit. You see, Betty was a great bookkeeper, but she budgeted like a poor person. She paid everyone else first and herself last. Since there was rarely anything left over, she paid herself nothing. Her creditors, the government, and bankers were all more important than Betty. Betty argued and fought. All of her training told her to pay everyone else first. The thought of not paying her bills or taxes made her weak in the knees. I finally got her to understand she was doing us a favor. She was helping us out. I explained to her that she was helping us solve a very big problem, the problem of not having enough money, and as you know, solving problems makes us smarter. When she understood she was actually creating income through expense, she was willing to go along with our plan to create a budget surplus. For every dollar of income, Betty would take 30 cents and put it in savings, tithing, and investing. She knew that saving, tithing, and investing were a necessary expense to create a surplus, our first and most important expense. With the 70 cents from every dollar left, she was to pay taxes, liabilities such as our mortgage and car payments, and then our bills such as electricity, water, food, clothing, etc. Needless to say, for a long time we came up short every month. Although we had paid ourselves first, we did not have enough money to pay others. There were some months Kim and I came up as much as $4,000 short. We could have paid the $4,000 from our assets, but that was our money. The asset column belonged to us. Instead of panic, Betty was instructed to sit down with us and let us know how short we were each month. After taking a deep breath, Kim and I would then say, "It's time to get back to financial IQ number 1, making more money." With that, Kim and I would hustle around doing whatever we could to make more money. Kim, with her marketing background, often called businesses and offered to consult with them on their marketing plans. She also took modeling jobs and sold a line of clothes. I offered to teach investment or sales and marketing classes. For a few months, I trained sales teams at a local real estate company. I even made money by helping a family move, and by clearing some land for another family. In other words, we swallowed our pride and did whatever it took to make the extra money. Somehow, we always made it. And somehow Betty stuck with us and assisted us with our problem, solution, and process, even though she worried more about us than we did. Unfortunately, Betty could help us but was unwilling to help herself. Last we heard, she retired and moved in with her single daughter. They share expenses, using Betty's payments from Social Security to pay them. They do not have a budget surplus. Investing our money in 1989, Kim purchased her first rental property. She put down $5,000 and made $25 in positive cash flow per month. Today, Kim controls a multi-million-dollar portfolio and over 1,000 rental units, and it's still growing. If we had not made investing an expense and paid ourselves first, we might still be paying everyone else first. Savings: we saved money until we had over a year's expenses in cash. Instead of holding cash in a retail bank, We hold it in gold and silver ETFs. This means that if we need cash, that is, liquidity, our liquid assets are held by our stockbroker in gold and silver certificates, not in cash at a retail bank. As you know, I do not like the US dollar, because it continues to drop in value.